Today, in the subject of medical microbiome, we are going to study about retrovirus. Okay, so what is retrovirus, what it does, and why it is called a retrovirus? What is the reason behind it? All those things we are going to discuss in this. So, introduction in this objective of this nature, the main aspect of this topic is to understand the scenario and the detail in a very clear manner, like what are the basic things that are essentially incorporated in the uh, retrovirus scenario, okay, and why it is called a retrovirus, why it is so important for the individuals, okay, and the students of um, medical microbiology. And what will be the outcomes? You will learn about the clinical features and preventions that are essentially required in the prevention of AIDS. So, what is a retrovirus? Okay, a retrovirus is a virus that uses RNA as its genetic material, right? When a retrovirus infects a cell, it makes a DNA copy of its genome and insert it into the cell, into the DNA of the host cell. There are a variety of different retroviruses that cause harm to human diseases such as some forms of cancer and AIDS. So here you can see that the retrovirus has a genetic material that is RNA. It converts its RNA into DNA because the host cell is mostly eukaryotic and they have DNA, not RNA. Okay, so it has to uh, convert the genetic material of RNA into the DNA. So here you can see a retrovirus came into contact with the host cell where it injected its genetic material or RNA into the cell, and with the help of enzyme reverse transcriptase, the DNA is converted into RNA is converted into DNA, and then insertion integration into the host cell genome takes place. That further leads to the duplication of viral RNA, and after the manufacturing of all the parts, the retrovirus combines itself and gets released from the host cell. So that is why it is called retrovirus in nature. So a retrovirus is a type of virus that inserts a copy of its RNA genome into the DNA of a host cell that it invades, thus changing the genome of that cell. Once inside the host cell cytoplasm, the virus uses its own reverse transcriptase enzyme to produce DNA from its RNA genome. The reverse of the usual pattern, thus called retro. The meaning of retro is backwards. Okay. The new DNA is then incorporated into the host cell genome by an integrase enzyme, at which point the retroviral DNA is referred to as provirus. So the main aim of retrovirus is to insert its genetic material that is in the form of RNA into the host cell, and with the help of reverse transcriptase enzyme, this retrovirus converts its genetic material from RNA to DNA, and with the help of integrase enzyme, it integrates its viral DNA into the genome of the host cell. The host cell then treats the viral DNA as the parts of its own genome, transcribing and translating the viral gene. Because a host cell is not aware of what had already took place, and because of that, the host cell thinks that this part of DNA is completely the part of its own viral, its own cellular genome. And because virus they don't have molecular machinery that is required to manufacture the proteins and all its parts. So these things they just start being produced and manufactured, and different parts of virus starts to be manufactured by the cellular molecular machinery of the cell, and after that virus gets rearranged and it explodes out of the cell. Right. So this is how the cellular molecular machinery start producing the proteins required to assemble new copies of the virus. Retrovirus have undergone an explosion in our knowledge in about the last 40 years. The term retrovirus means it behaves backwards from the original way that we all think about genetics, which is DNA makes RNA and RNA makes protein. But here, the RNA makes DNA and that makes protein. So, retroviruses have an RNA genome, and when they get into the cell, that RNA is reverse transcribed into DNA, so it goes backwards. The DNA is then inserted into the genome of the cell. When the cell divides, it copies this and begins to express RNA. Okay, so this is how it is working. Some of the RNA is translated into proteins, which are needed to package the retrovirus, and another of those RNA is RNA genome that goes into those packaging genome. So, what they are trying to say, the whole RNA genome of virus does not get reverse transcribed by the enzyme. One portion is left that has to be packaged in the new virus particles that are being formed. And another of those RNA is the RNA genome that goes into those packaging material and is excreted from the cell and goes on to infect other cells. So there are many different kinds of retroviruses. Now, the most famous one right at the moment is human immunodeficiency virus or HIV, which causes acquired immunodeficiency syndrome or AIDS. But there are many different kinds of retroviruses that are associated with diseases, including cancer, leukemia, and AIDS. Obviously, finally, retroviruses have been tamed for the use of gene therapy. So, it is possible to take out all of the genes that allow the retrovirus to replicate itself and replace that with a gene that is particular cell that you are interested is in missing. And so using the integrating ability of a retrovirus, you can actually take something that could ordinarily harm people and turn it into something uh, that can be used as therapeutic vehicle to make them better. So HIV is a virus that targets and alters the immune system. Its main function is to alter your immune system. increasing the risk and impact of other infections and diseases. Without treatment, the infection might progress to an advanced stage called AIDS. So, you must understand HIV AIDS is not a one thing. HIV virus causes the condition they are known as AIDS. Human immunodeficiency virus infection and acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. They are known as HIV AIDS. So HIV virus caused AIDS is a spectrum of condition caused by infection with the immunodeficiency virus or retrovirus. Following initially infection up, infecting a person may not notice any symptoms or may have experienced a brief period of influenza-like illness. So, this type of virus, when it is trying to infect any individual, that individual in the starting just experience some minor illnesses that are not that much noticeable in nature. If the infection progresses, it interferes more with the immune system, increasing the risk of developing common infections such as tuberculosis, as well as other opportunistic infections and tumors, which are otherwise rare in people who have normal immune system and function. These late symptoms of infections are referred to as acquired immunodeficiency syndrome or AIDS. This stage is often associated with unintended weight loss without any reason or illness. So here you can see the difference between AIDS and HIV. AIDS is acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. AIDS is a medical condition. Immune system is too weak to fight against the infection, right? And uh, how it is caused? It is caused by HIV, human immunodeficiency virus. HIV is a virus which attacks immune system in humans. So, 1st December is always celebrated as World AIDS Day. You must remember it. It's a question of general knowledge and how people they start to see the things differently. Due to medical advances, people with HIV and access to quality healthcare very rarely develop AIDS once they have started taking HIV treatment. As experts such as World Health Organization or WHO trusted sources observe, HIV has become a manageable condition and many people with HIV have long healthy lives. So, when the condition with HIV gets severe, then it develops into AIDS. Otherwise, everything is up to the mark. The individual is living proper life with the help of medication. The life expectancy of a person with HIV is now approaching that of someone who tests negative for the virus, provided that the person takes medications called antiretroviral therapy on an ongoing basis. See, what is the real scenario of HIV? When an individual gets infected by all those things, and what is the real scene? The real scene is that the HIV, the human immunodeficiency virus, its main aim is to enter your CD4 cells from where the WBCs are being manufactured, replicate itself, and gain access to the immune system, where it weakens the immune system where it is not at all encountered by the immune system. It keeps on increasing and it weakens your immune system to that level that your body is not at all able to defend itself against common infection. So it is very common if an individual is having HIV/AIDS and he or she dies with the symptoms of common cold or any allergy because his or her immune system is not up to the mark for defending itself. Okay, as of 2019, around 68% of adults and 53% of children with HIV worldwide were receiving lifelong treatment. So here we are exploring the HIV/AIDS, including their symptoms, causes, and treatment. So what is HIV? HIV stands for Human Immunodeficiency Virus, and it attacks immune system called CD4 cells. These types of T cells are white blood cells, okay, that circulate detecting infections throughout the body and faults and anomalies in other cells. HIV targets and infiltrates CD4 cells, using them to create more copies of the virus. So CD4 cells are targeted by these HIV virus. It destroys the cells and reduces the body's ability to combat other infections and ability and diseases. This increases the risk and impact of opportunistic infections and some types of cancer. It is worth nothing, however, that some people have HIV for long periods without experiencing any symptoms. Okay, sometimes they also have HIV, but they don't have any other symptoms. In this image, you can see electron microscopy picture of HIV virus in human tissue. HIV is a lifelong condition, but treatments and certain strategies can prevent the virus from transmitting and infection from progressing. So now scientists are able to cure the symptoms, but they cannot cure the disease completely. Because of these things, the AIDS is now somewhat manageable rather than being lethal. Okay, so now one can very easily manage the symptoms and without being turned into a dangerous scenario. AIDS. What is AIDS? Okay, AIDS stands for Acquired Immunodeficiency Syndrome. It is an advanced stage of HIV infection. Okay, when the infection caused by HIV gets into its last stages or worst form, doctors identify AIDS as having a CD4 count fewer than 200 cells per cubic millimeter in your blood. As they may diagnose AIDS if a person has characteristic opportunistic infections associated types of cancers or both. When a person with HIV does not receive treatment, AIDS is likely to develop. So, if you are receiving treatment for HIV and you are HIV positive and you are taking proper medications and proper precautions, it is very less likely that you can develop a condition of AIDS. Okay, so it is very secondary in nature. So, if you are careless, the individual is not at all aware of that he or she might be having AIDS, then the condition gets worse day by day, and it further develops into HIV further develops into AIDS. However, The condition there is immune system gradually wears down. The immune system becomes really weak. Okay, advances in antiretroviral treatments have made this progression to AIDS increasingly less common. So our technology is progressing day by day, but it is not being what you say uh, in the final form. Okay, we can control the symptoms now, but we still cannot eradicate completely HIV. In 2018, there were more than 1.1 million people living with HIV in the country of United States and 6,000 deaths related to AIDS. So, what are the causes? HIV can transmit when body fluids containing virus come in contact with a permeable barrier in body or small breaks in moist tissues such as the genitals. So, if your body is having any breaks or cuts or bruises, then if you come in contact of this virus enters inside your body. Specifically, HIV can transmit via blood, semen, pre-seminal fluid, vaginal fluid, rectal fluids, or breast milk. Okay, here you can see that how the HIV virus is increasing its number and how it is entering inside the CD4 cells. In the first thing you can see first stage binding and fusion, where HIV spikes are trying to bind with the host cell, and in second thing you can see the HIV virus injecting its genetic material, the reverse transcription inhibition, where with the help of reverse transcriptase, its genetic material that is in the form of RNA is transcribed into DNA, and third stage is integration, where that viral DNA gets integrated in the genome of that CD4 cell. Then the process of transcription and combination with transcription takes place. The viral DNA is transformed into RNA, and that fifth stage is called translation, where that viral RNA is now being combined with the molecular machinery of the cell, which starts to manufacture all the viral particles that later on combines and packs to form a new virus, and that protease cleavage takes place in separation from the host cell and maturation. Because of that, they are released outside in the environment. So this is the whole life cycle of that virus. Virus cannot transmit through saliva, as a person cannot contract HIV through open mouth kissing, for example. One of the main causes of HIV is anal and vaginal intercourse. For the transmission to happen, the people must not be using barrier protection such as a condom or taking pre-exposure prophylaxis (PrEP), a treatment that aims to prevent HIV transmission among the people with known risk factors. Okay, so here they have shown the structure of HIV. What are the main factors and main structural things involved? Here you can see the HIV glycoproteins. Okay, HIV capsid, HIV RNA, HIV enzyme, and HIV envelope. So the real meaning is that HIV capsid, HIV core that contains HIV RNA, okay, or retroviral RNA. HIV envelope, outer surface of HIV. It is protein having the phospholipids of the host cell. HIV enzymes, proteins that carry out steps of HIV life cycle. HIV glycoproteins, they are protein spikes embedded in the HIV envelope, and HIV RNA is the genetic material. So, what is HIV? Human immunodeficiency virus is a virus that attacks the cells that help the body fight infection. In simple words, there is no cure, but it is a treatable with medicine. Another main cause of HIV transmission in the country is sharing equipment for injecting drugs. Okay, if you are using syringes or any other thing, then you cannot use the syringe used by another individual. Less commonly, HIV transmission to babies during pregnancy, childbirth, or breastfeeding. Also, there is a chance of transmission in blood transfusion, though the risk is extremely low when blood donations are effectively screened. Undetectable or untransmittable. There is another form of HIV that is undetectable in nature or that is not at all transmittable. HIV can only transmit through fluids that contain a certain amount of virus. If a person has undetectable level of HIV, the virus cannot transmit to another person. Some people use a shorthand to refer to the fact as undetectable levels of HIV that are untransmittable, which means U equal to U. Doctors consider HIV to be undetectable when the amount of the virus in the body is so low uh, that the blood test cannot identify it. Having undetectable levels requires a person to continually receive effective treatment and follow the recommendation plan carefully, which usually involves taking medications every day. A person with undetectable levels still has HIV, and regular monitoring with blood test is key to maintaining this status. So every condition and every scenario has been observed very clearly, and we are day by day our antiviral technology is evolving. So very soon in the coming future we will be able to design its vaccine or medicine for. So progression to AIDS. The chances of HIV progressing to AIDS uh, vary widely from person to person and depends on many factors, including the person's age, body's ability to defend against HIV, accessibility of quality healthcare, presence of other infections, person's genetic resistance to certain strains of HIV, strains of HIV as some are drug resistant. You must know that from where this HIV virus or human immunodeficiency virus came into existence. It came from chimpanzees to humans. It was found in chimps, and from chimps it has been transferred to humans. So, what are the symptoms? For the most part, other infections with bacteria, other viruses, fungi, or parasites cause the more pronounced symptoms of HIV. So, what are early symptoms of HIV? Some people with HIV have no symptoms for months or even years, even after contracting the virus. Partly because of this, 1 in 7 people with HIV in the US do not even know that they have it. While a person with no symptoms may be unlikely to seek care, there is still a high risk of transmission. For this reason, experts recommend regular testing so that everyone is aware of their HIV status. Meanwhile, around 80% of people with HIV develop flu like symptoms around 2 to 6 weeks after contracting the infection. These symptoms are collectively called acute retroviral syndrome. Early symptoms of HIV may include a fever, chills, sweating, particularly at night, enlarged glands or swollen lymph nodes, a diffuse rash, fatigue, weakness. These symptoms result from the immune system fighting off different types of infections. Anyone who has several of these symptoms and may have even uh, contracted HIV in the past 2 to 6 weeks should take a test. So one must always be aware of the current status of HIV in their blood profile. Asymptomatic HIV is an electron microscope image of HIV, like the blood vessel. After the symptom of acute retroviral syndrome resolve, many people go on to experience no HIV symptoms for years. While they feel well and appear healthy, the virus continues to develop and damage the immune system and organs internally. If the person does not take medication that prevents the replication of virus, this slow process can continue for around 8 to 10 years. However, taking antiretroviral can stop this process and suppress the virus completely. So, what are late stage HIV infections? If a person with HIV does not receive effective treatment, if the person is really careless and he is not at all worried about the current scenario and procedures, then the condition can get critical. Right? The virus weakens the body's ability to fight infection and exposing it to serious illness. When CD4 cells are severely depleted at fewer than 200 cells per cubic millimeter, a doctor can diagnose AIDS, which is something called stage 3 HIV. That is a very severe case of HIV. The presence of certain opportunistic infection involving bacteria, virus, fungi, mycobacterium also help doctor to identify AIDS. So, what are the symptoms of AIDS? Can include many things, okay, like blurred vision, a dry cough, night sweats, white spots on the tongue or mouth, shortness of breath or dyspnea, swollen glands lasting for weeks, diarrhea which is usually persistent or chronic, a fever over 37 degrees centigrade fever that lasts for weeks, continuous fatigue, unintentional weight loss. Without any reason, the weight is reduced. A person with AIDS has significant increased risk of developing life-threatening illness. Without treatment, people with AIDS typically live around 3 years. Okay, so if they don't receive any sort of treatment or any sort of required uh, other things, and the person is not at all concentrating on the treatment, then the condition of AIDS readily lasts for a time period of 3 years, and after that, individual die. However, by taking other medications alongside HIV treatment, a person with AIDS can control, prevent, and treat serious complications. A person with HIV takes effective treatment, the infection may never progress to stage 3. Treatment can also help a person to recover some lost immune function, which will help ward off severe infection. Preventing complications. Prevention is the key to extending the life of a person. With late stage HIV, it is important to manage the viral load of HIV medications and take additional precautions such as using condoms to prevent other STIs or STDs, having vaccinations for potential opportunistic infection, identify any environmental factors such as a pet cat that could lead to infection, limiting exposure to these factors, such as by wearing gloves while changing cat litter, avoiding foods with a high risk of contamination, such as undercooked eggs and meat, unpasteurized dairy and fruit juices, and the raw seed sprouts, not drinking water straight from a lake or a river or unfiltered tap in a certain country, especially developing or underdeveloped countries. Asking your doctor about relevant vaccination and ways to limit exposures to pathogens at work, at home, and on vacation. So every time you have to be aware of it. Now, we have already discussed so much that uh, what are the real reasons and what are the real problems. So, HIV virus or human immunodeficiency virus is a virus that is also known as retrovirus. Its main aim is to weaken your immune system so that it can readily infect further and cause a severe condition known as AIDS or acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. So it makes your immune system so weak that individual cannot fend off very acute infections like common cold, flu, and all those allergic conditions. So a person can further develop very dangerous infection and die because of that. But now somewhat the symptoms are treatable. If you are taking proper medications, AIDS cannot develop into HIV cannot develop into a worse condition called AIDS, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. So, along with that, the person is receiving regular medication, regular blood profiling, and he or she is equally able to live a very long life like not other normal people who do not have AIDS or any other problem. Now, coming on to the MCQ. Which of the following is a symptom of AIDS? Fever, swollen lymph nodes, tiredness, all the above. The correct answer is all the above. The first ever uh, instance of AIDS was reported in USA. First case. HIV parasitizes T helper cells. It affects the T helper cells of your immune system, and from there it will start weakening your immune system completely. HIV can also spread through sharing water, breathing in infected droplets, sharing needles or kissing. The correct answer is C, sharing needles. How many stages of HIV infection exist? The correct answer is three stages. Third stage is the last stage. HIV is thought to have originated from birds, mosquitoes, chimpanzees, or none of the above. The correct answer is chimpanzee. HIV AIDS was completely found in the chimps, and chimps were dying because of that. But miraculously, they developed the condition and they started cohabitating with the HIV virus. But we humans are still working on that. SIV is the abbreviation of Simonian Simian immunodeficiency virus. In individuals with HIV, opportunistic infections are more frequent because HIV virus it weakens the immune system to a very lowest phase where the body is not at all able to defend itself against very common and very acute infections. HIV is a uh, lentivirus. Simian immunodeficiency virus is known to affect uh, non-human primates. That is A. So these are the references from where we have collected the data. So thank you for listening to our lecture.